My mother didn't even look inside the envelope. She just held it between two fingers like it was something dirty, smiled at the room and said, "Oh, sweetheart, we appreciate the thought. But tonight is not the time for handmade teacher gifts." 40 people laughed. Not loudly, not cruelly at first. Just the kind of polite, uncomfortable laughter people use when they don't know if a joke is supposed to hurt. My father sat at the head of the table in his Navy retirement suit, the one my mother had spent 3 weeks choosing, and looked at me like I had embarrassed him simply by standing there. "Clara," he said, "your sister just announced a 7-figure business deal. Could you not make this about your classroom for 5 minutes?" My sister Madison smiled into her champagne glass. My mother pushed the envelope back toward me. And that was the moment I realized none of them had any idea what they had just rejected. Inside that envelope was not a handmade card. It was not a poem from my students. It was not a cheap little certificate printed in the school office. Inside that envelope was an invitation to Washington, D.C., confirming that I had been named the National Humanities Teacher of the Year, a $50,000 grant, a televised ceremony, a feature in 3 major newspapers. The kind of honor my father would have bragged about for the rest of his life if it had belonged to Madison. But it belonged to me. And by the time that night ended, the entire town would know exactly what my family had thrown away. My name is Clara Whitmore. I'm 33 years old, and I teach literature at a public high school in New Hampshire. For most people, that sentence sounds normal. For my parents, it sounded like failure. My father, Richard Whitmore, spent 38 years as a senior finance director for a private hospital group. He wore polished shoes even on Saturdays and believed a person's worth could be measured by salary, title, and how many important people returned their phone calls. My mother, Evelyn, had mastered the art of making disappointment sound elegant. She never said, "You're not enough." She said things like, "Teaching is noble, of course, but you're capable of more." Or, "Your father and I just worry you've settled." Or my personal favorite, "It's sweet that you love those children, Clara, but love doesn't build a life." Then there was Madison, my older sister, 37. Beautiful, polished, sharp as a paper cut. Madison owned a luxury event planning company called Whitmore and Vale. She planned weddings for people who spent more on flowers than I made in a semester. She drove a white Range Rover, wore cream-colored suits, and used words like curated and bespoke in normal conversation. To my parents, Madison was proof that they had raised a winner. I was proof that even good families could have an unfortunate surprise. The call came on a rainy Tuesday in March. I was in my classroom after school, sitting beneath a flickering fluorescent light, reading essays about Macbeth. Half the essays were brilliant. Half claimed Macbeth was a misunderstood entrepreneur. I was laughing at that line when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Teachers get strange calls all the time. Parents, district offices, automated reminders, grant committees asking for another form we already submitted twice. But I answered, "Miss Whitmore?" a woman asked. "Yes, this is Dr. Elaine Foster from the National Humanities Council. I'm calling with representatives from the Department of Education." I sat up straighter. She continued, "I'm delighted to inform you that you have been selected as this year's National Humanities Teacher of the Year." For a second, I thought I had misheard her. Then she said it again. National Humanities Teacher of the Year. My name. My classroom. My students. The literacy program I had built from nothing. The after-school writing club that started with 6 shy kids and became a county-wide youth publication. The book drive that put 8,000 novels into homes where there had never been a bookshelf. The grant proposal I had written at midnight, half asleep, wearing pajama pants and drinking cold coffee. They had seen it. Someone had seen it. I didn't cry until I called my husband. Liam answered on the second ring. He was a paramedic, which meant he could stay calm during almost anything. Except this. When I told him, he went silent for 3 seconds. Then he shouted so loudly that one of his coworkers yelled, "Is everybody alive?" "My wife," Liam said, voice cracking, "just became the best teacher in the country." That was Liam. He never made me feel small. I told my principal next. She burst into tears and hugged me in the hallway so hard I dropped my folder. I told 2 colleagues. They screamed. I told my students the next morning after the official announcement went live. They clapped, stomped their feet, and chanted my name until the assistant principal came running because he thought there had been a fight. Everyone reacted with joy. Everyone except the people I still hadn't told. My father's retirement party was 4 weeks away. He had chosen the Grand Oak Hotel, the most expensive venue in town, with white tablecloths, gold chargers, and a jazz trio in the corner. My mother had turned the evening into less of a retirement party and more of a coronation. It was supposed to be Richard Whitmore's night. 38 years of success. 38 years of status. 38 years of telling people exactly what he thought they were worth. I thought, foolishly, that maybe this was the right time. Maybe if I handed him the official invitation at his own celebration, in front of people he respected, he would finally understand. Maybe he would see that teaching was not a fallback. Maybe my mother would stop introducing me as our younger daughter Clara. She works at a school. Maybe Madison would stop asking whether I had considered educational consulting, which was her polite way of saying, "Can you please find a job that sounds better at parties?" I printed the official announcement, placed it behind the invitation, and wrote my parents a letter. Dear Mom and Dad, I know teaching was never the future you imagined for me. But this work has shaped my life in ways I'm proud of. Every day, I help young people find their voices, and now that work has been recognized nationally, I hope tonight, while we celebrate Dad's career, you can also understand mine. Love, Clara. I put everything in a cream envelope and sealed it with a gold sticker. Liam watched me from the kitchen doorway. You don't have to give it to them, he said gently. I know, you don't have to keep proving yourself. I know that too, but I still slipped the envelope into my purse. Because daughters like me learn hope the hard way. We keep a little of it hidden somewhere, even after everyone tells us to throw it away. The night of the retirement party, I wore a navy dress and the pearl earrings Liam gave me on our 5th anniversary. My mother noticed the dress immediately. Oh, she said, looking me up and down when we arrived. That's actually quite nice. Actually, that word did a lot of work in our family. My father barely looked at me. Liam, he said, shaking my husband's hand. Good to see you. Then he turned toward the entrance. Madison's here. Just like that, the air changed. My mother lit up. My father smiled. Madison swept into the hotel ballroom wearing a champagne silk dress, followed by her husband Blake, who always looked like he was posing for a watch advertisement. Behind them came 2 photographers. Not guests. Photographers. Of course, Madison had brought photographers. Daddy, she said, kissing both of his cheeks. Tonight is going to be unforgettable. She was right. Just not in the way she thought. Dinner began with speeches. My father's former colleagues praised his discipline, his leadership, his uncompromising standards. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Madison gave a polished toast about legacy and ambition and how Dad had taught her that success is never accidental. Then she made her announcement. She stood near the stage, lifted her champagne glass, and smiled at the room. As many of you know, Whitmore and Vale has been expanding. Tonight, I'm thrilled to share that we've secured the historic Bellamy estate for our newest luxury wedding venue. People clapped. Madison continued, glowing. And I'm especially proud to say that Mom and Dad believed in this project from the beginning. Their investment made it possible. My fork froze halfway to my plate. Investment? Liam looked at me. I knew that look. Careful. My parents had mentioned giving Madison a little help 6 months earlier, but I had not known it was the Bellamy estate. Everyone in town knew that property had problems. Foundation issues, zoning disputes, historical preservation restrictions. A previous developer had backed out because renovation costs doubled before the first permit cleared. And now Madison was announcing, in front of my father's entire professional circle, that my parents had invested in it. My father looked proud. My mother looked radiant. Madison looked victorious. I looked at Liam and whispered, "How much?" He shook his head slightly. We didn't know, but I felt cold all the same. After dessert, I went to the restroom just to breathe. On my way back, I heard Madison's voice near the side corridor. She was on the phone. "No, I can't get another extension," she snapped. "The preservation board is being impossible." I stopped. "I know the contractor wants payment. I know. But once the second investor comes in, we'll be fine." A pause. Then her voice dropped. "My parents are already in for $220,000. I can't ask them again until after tonight." My stomach turned. $220,000. My parents' retirement money. Their emergency fund. Their safety net. Tied up in Madison's impossible dream. I stepped back before she could see me and returned to the ballroom. Liam took one look at my face. What happened? She's drowning, I whispered, and she dragged them in with her. Before he could answer, my mother tapped a spoon against her glass. One last family moment, she announced. Richard, darling, Clara says she brought you something. My heart jumped. I had not told her to announce it. I had planned to give the envelope quietly, but now every face turned toward me. Madison leaned back in her chair, amused. My father sighed like he was preparing to tolerate something. Liam touched my hand under the table. You're okay, he whispered. I stood. I walked to the front with the envelope in my hand. Dad, I said, I know tonight is about your career. I just wanted to give you and Mom something that means a lot to me. I handed my mother the envelope first. She looked at it, not inside it, at it. Then she gave that smile. The public one, the one with no warmth behind it. Oh, sweetheart, she said, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. We appreciate the thought. But tonight is not the time for handmade teacher gifts. A few people laughed. My cheeks burned. Mom, I said quietly. It's not. She pushed the envelope back toward me. Clara, please. Your father has had a very important career. Let's not turn this into a school assembly. Madison covered her mouth, pretending to hide a smile. My father leaned back in his chair. Your mother is right, he said. There's a time and place. Something in me tightened. He wasn't done. Your sister just announced a major development project. That is the kind of achievement worth discussing tonight. The room went quiet. My father looked directly at me. I'm proud that Madison learned what ambition looks like. I wish you had done the same. Liam stood. I touched his wrist. No, not yet. My mother lowered her voice, but not enough. Clara, you're 33 years old. At some point, you need to stop hiding behind noble little excuses and build a real life. A real life. I looked at the envelope on the table, then at my father, then at Madison. And I laughed once. Not loudly, not bitterly, just enough to make everyone uncomfortable. You're right, I said. My mother blinked. This probably isn't the time for a handmade teacher gift. I picked up the envelope. But since you brought everyone into it, we might as well be honest. Madison's smile faded. I broke the gold seal and pulled out the invitation. The paper was thick, ivory, embossed with the seal of the National Humanities Council. I held it up. This is an invitation to Washington, D.C., I said. Next month, I'll be honored as the National Humanities Teacher of the Year. No one moved. I placed the invitation on the table in front of my father. There's also a $50,000 grant attached to the award. It will fund literacy programs across 3 public schools. A murmur moved through the ballroom. I pulled out the printed announcement. My classroom work is being featured in the Boston Globe, the Atlantic Education Review, and on the Department of Education's national platform. My mother stared at the papers as if they had changed languages. My father's jaw flexed. Madison looked like someone had cut the music in the middle of her entrance. From the back of the room, a woman stood. Mayor Caroline Hughes. I hadn't seen her arrive. She had been seated with my father's former colleagues near the stage. She walked forward slowly, every eye following her. Clara, she said warmly, I was hoping you would mention it tonight. My father turned toward her. Mayor Hughes picked up the announcement and looked around the room. For anyone here who may not understand the scale of this recognition, Clara Whitmore has brought national honor to this town. Her literacy program has changed graduation outcomes across the district. My office has used her work as a model for youth outreach. She looked at my parents. You must be extraordinarily proud. My mother's lips parted. Nothing came out. For once, Evelyn Whitmore had no elegant sentence ready. My father reached for the invitation, but I picked it up first. No, I said. His eyes snapped to mine. I wanted you to have this because I thought, maybe, just maybe, you would finally see me clearly. My voice did not shake. But you didn't even open it. The ballroom was silent now. Even the jazz trio had stopped playing. I folded the invitation carefully. So I'll keep it. Madison stood abruptly. Well, she said, laughing too brightly, this is lovely, Clara. Very sweet. But let's not pretend an award makes teaching some kind of empire. I turned to her. No, I said. It doesn't. Then I looked at my parents. But at least my work isn't being funded by Mom and Dad's retirement. The silence changed. Before, it had been shocked. Now it was hungry. My father's face darkened. What did you say? Madison's hand tightened around her champagne flute. "Clara is being dramatic," she said quickly. I looked at her. Am I? Then I turned back to my parents. The Bellamy estate hasn't cleared preservation review. The contractor hasn't been paid. The second investor hasn't come in. And Madison was planning to ask you for more money after tonight. My mother whispered, "Madison?" Madison's face went pale. "That is private business." "No," I said. "Private business is when you risk your own money." You announced their investment in front of this entire room so they couldn't question you without looking foolish. My father stood. His chair scraped against the floor. "Madison," he said slowly, "how much of our money is tied up?" Madison said nothing. My mother gripped the table. "How much?" Madison swallowed. 220,000. A woman at the next table gasped. My father looked like someone had struck him. "Is the project solvent?" Madison's silence answered for her. Mayor Hughes set the announcement back on the table and looked at my father with something almost like pity. "I would suggest you speak with an attorney before transferring another dollar." That was the second time that night my father looked smaller. The first time was when he realized I had succeeded. The second was when he realized Madison had failed. I slid the invitation back into the envelope. Liam stepped beside me. My mother reached toward me. "Clara, wait." I looked at her hand. Then at her face. "I did wait," I said. "For years." Her eyes filled. "I waited for you to ask about my students. I waited for Dad to visit my classroom. I waited for one dinner where my job wasn't treated like a family joke." I picked up my purse. "I'm done waiting." My father's voice softened. "Clara, don't leave like this." I almost laughed again. "You told me there was a time and place." "I agree." I looked around the ballroom. "This is the time. And this is the place." Then I turned and walked out. Liam followed me without a word. Behind us, people began whispering. Chairs moved. Someone called Madison's name. My mother started crying. My father demanded documents, numbers, answers. But I didn't stay to watch the collapse. That was their table. I was no longer begging for a seat at it. The first call came the next morning. My mother. I let it ring. Then my father. Then Madison. Then my mother again. By noon, I had 17 missed calls. At 2:15, while my juniors were debating whether Gatsby was romantic or delusional, my phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "You ruined me." I stared at it for a moment. Then I typed back, "No. I stopped helping you ruin them." I turned my phone over and went back to teaching. 3 days later, the local paper ran the story. Not about the party. About me. Local teacher wins national honor for transforming student literacy. There is a photo of me standing in my classroom, surrounded by bookshelves my students had painted themselves. The article mentioned the grant, the ceremony, the students who had gone from failing English to publishing essays, poems, and scholarship applications. It did not mention my parents. It did not mention Madison. That bothered my mother more than if it had. Because the first rule in my family was simple. If something made us look good, it belonged to all of us. If something made us look bad, it belonged to me. A week later, the Bellamy estate project froze. The Preservation Board denied Madison's renovation plan. The contractor filed a lien. The second investor vanished. My parents' money was locked in legal paperwork that would take months, maybe years, to untangle. That was when my father finally called from a number I didn't recognize. I answered because I was expecting a parent call. "Clara," his voice sounded older. "Dad." A long silence. "Your mother and I need help." I closed my eyes. There it was. Not "I'm sorry," not "we were wrong," help. What kind of help? "We need you to speak to Mayor Hughes. She respects you. Maybe she could put in a word with the Preservation Board." "No?" He went quiet. "No? No, Dad. Clara, this is our retirement." "I know. Then how can you be so cold?" That hurt. But only for a second. Then I remembered the ballroom. The envelope. The laughter. The way he had looked at Madison with pride and me with embarrassment. "I'm not cold," I said. "I'm clear." His breathing changed. "Your sister made mistakes. Yes, but she's family. So am I." Silence. This time, I let it sit between us. Finally, he said, "We didn't know your award was important." I laughed softly. "That's the problem. You needed a mayor to tell you your daughter mattered." He didn't answer. "I love you, Dad," I said. "But I'm not fixing this." Then I hung up. For the first time in my life, I did not feel guilty. I felt tired. And then, strangely, free. The ceremony in Washington happened 6 weeks later. Liam sat in the front row, crying before my name was even called. My principal came. 3 students came too, funded by the district because they had written letters insisting they should be there. One of them, a quiet boy named Ethan who used to hide his essays under his notebook, stood when I walked on stage and clapped so hard his hands turned red. My parents did not attend. Madison did not send congratulations. And somehow, the world did not end. When I gave my speech, I did not talk about my family. I talked about classrooms. I talked about the girl who wrote her first poem after losing her brother. I talked about the boy who said books were stupid until he found one that made him feel less alone. I talked about public schools, underpaid teachers, tired students, and the radical act of believing young people can become more than the world expects. At the end, I said, a legacy is not always a building, a title, or a bank account. Sometimes a legacy is a sentence a student carries for the rest of their life. I believe you can do this. The audience stood. Liam cried harder. I smiled so wide my face hurt. And for once, I did not wonder whether my parents would have been proud. I was proud. That was enough. 3 months later, a letter arrived from my father. Not a text. Not a voicemail. A letter. His handwriting looked shakier than I remembered. Clara, I have started this letter several times and failed each time. I do not know how to apologize without making excuses, so I will try to be plain. I was wrong. I was wrong about your career. I was wrong about what success means. I was wrong to let my pride speak louder than my love for my daughter. Your mother and I watched your speech online. I am ashamed that strangers stood for you before I did. I do not expect forgiveness now, but I hope one day I can earn a conversation. Dad, I read it twice. Then I set it on the kitchen table. Liam asked, "Are you okay?" I thought about that. I think so. Are you going to answer? Not today. And I didn't. Because forgiveness is not a performance. It is not something you hand people because they finally found the right words. It is a door. And after years of having that door slammed in my face, I had earned the right to decide when or whether it opened. Madison never apologized. Her company downsized. The Range Rover disappeared. Blake left 8 months later, though nobody said that part out loud. My parents recovered some of their money, not all of it. They moved into a smaller house the following spring. My mother sent a Christmas card that year with a note inside. We hope you and Liam are well. We saw the article about your student's publication. Congratulations. It wasn't enough, but it was the first sentence she had ever written to me that didn't shrink my work. So I kept the card. Not because everything was healed, because sometimes proof matters. Proof that people can change a little. Proof that I no longer need them to change completely in order for me to be whole. And me? I still teach. I still arrive before sunrise. I still buy extra notebooks with my own money. I still read essays that make me laugh, cry, and occasionally question the future of grammar. Every year, a new group of students walks through my door carrying invisible burdens. And every year, I get to tell them the thing I needed to hear when I was their age. You are not small just because someone failed to see you. You are not unsuccessful just because your life doesn't impress the right people. You are not worthless because your work is quiet. My family spent years calling me just a teacher. They said it like an insult. Now I hear it differently. Just a teacher. Just the person who notices when a child stops speaking. Just the person who writes recommendation letters after midnight. Just the person who keeps granola bars in her desk because hungry students cannot analyze Shakespeare. Just the person who gives hundreds of young people a little more courage than they had before. If that is just anything, then I will wear it proudly. My mother once pushed my envelope away in front of a room full of people. She thought she was rejecting a cheap little teacher gift. But what she really pushed away was the last version of me willing to beg for her approval. And I'm grateful for that now. Because when I picked that envelope back up, I picked myself up with it. And this time, I did not hand myself back.